Welcome to Space Insiders. My name is Tony Sewell, and as usual, here with my great mate Rob Riak. How you going, Rob?
Good, Tony. Welcome back to the U.S. Hope
Oh,
you had a good trip.
it was really good. The pressure's off a little bit. We found a house to live in and got the kids enrolled in school. So it was mission accomplished last week. So we're only about 4 weeks away from the big move to Australia. So yeah, the pressure
So
is the
exciting.
pressure is starting to build a little bit, but it's pretty
So
exciting.
exciting. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've gotten a lot done in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sprint towards the end,
Yeah.
but no, it's gonna be fun. And I can't believe it's Thanksgiving this week.
Can't
Crazy.
either. I
This
know. I
this
can't
year has
either.
just
I can't
disappearing.
wait to sign off today.
Have you got any plans this week, or are you just at home?
We got family, local,
Yeah.
and some from out of town and lots of kids, which is always really good. And so yeah, really looking forward to it. Just a little bit of downtime, and
Yeah.
just focus on the present, focus on family and friends. So it's
Stuff
it's
that
always nice
actually
little reboot.
matters.
Yep, stuff that really
Yep,
matters. Yep.
yep,
When
that's
you're
it.
when you're 97 years old or 100 years old and you're looking back and you're really going to regret those emails you didn't send out, or are you going to actually regret not resolving a fight with the family? I think it's probably the latter,
Yeah,
even
for
if that's
sure.
even attainable. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look,
Um,
we've got a really good guest. I say this every week, but I'm excited about our guest today. Carsten Drachmann is CEO of GOM Space, Danish space manufacturer, small sats. Carsten and I go back quite a few years. He gave me my first sales management job when we worked together at Data Path, which is a great experience. He's been a great mentor and friend over the years. So it was really cool to talk to him for the show today.
Yeah, I never met him before. I was very impressed with him, and I thought it was interesting when we talk a little bit about how do you take a company and try to turn it around, which was a very unique
Mm.
discussion today. And his answer wasn't well, you look at the business case and you come up with a new plan and you do a market analysis and you do all this business school stuff. His answer was the people, which
Yep.
I loved. Right? I mean,
Yep.
which is so true, and it's I think oftentimes overlooked. And I think if you're really true to yourself as a successful leader, at the end of the day, if you really think about it, it is the people, and it's not a
Yeah.
cliche. It's are people in the right roles? Are they excited to do their job? Do you have the right people in the right roles? And like kind of what gets the whole organization moving on a day to day basis when things are really really hard, and when the company's really being challenged, but also kind of are there for the successes too. And that was a lot of what his focus was in answering that question, which I thought was really great, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like e every one of these discussions we have, it comes back to the people and the culture. And uh, I think I think a lot of sort of management theory and the way that a lot of that some companies um, sort of structure their thinking around it. I think they often pay. I think there's lip service sort of paid to it a lot of the time, but like the reality is like we're managing people and people work with people and being really deliberate around how you help uh, how you help develop the culture in the company and how you help people do their jobs and be successful, and because we're all living our lives and it's such it all it all comes back to that in the end. It's been one of the most interesting things I think uh, through this journey that we've had with this podcast. It's been absolutely been a common theme.
Yep, I agree.
Cool. So before we get to the chat with Carsten, any news items caught your eye this week?
I think just a couple of things that are, I think, pretty interesting. I mean, the one thing is that the buzz around the Blue Origin landing still continues.
Yeah,
People just can't believe it. I think they're just so excited about that engineering feat, but also what it does to the market. So it's
competition.
hard to comb through all of the great Blue Origin announcements and discussions around it to get to other news. But there's a couple things. I mean, one is I think this the Starliner, challenges that Boeing has had with that spacecraft, and we all know about the unfortunate situation with the astronauts that had to stay up on the ISS for extended periods of time. Even though I think I read a few things that if you talked to them directly, and if you had a chance to talk to them, they wouldn't actually have complained that much about being on the ISS for that long. It just tells you how amazing these people are,
Yeah.
and how different they are. But I think the future of the Starliner, at least in the next couple of years, is seems to be a little bit clearer. I think what they want to do is NASA wants to focus on, the next missions to be mostly cargo. And they're saying, there's probably going to be a launch, not necessarily before April of next year, but maybe sometimes, maybe shortly thereafter. And I think as part of that, they reduced a bit of the commitment for NASA by about $700 million for by kind of pivoting there. And it was interesting to note that Boeing has had about $2 billion in losses from Starliner since 2016. It just tells you
Yeah.
how. I think for me, it tells you like just how incredibly difficult it is to do this stuff. Not that it's a surprise, but also how impressive it has been that other companies like SpaceX have been able to do that. It's just the complexity of it and the cost and the engineering is just tremendous.
It does make
Um,
you it does make you wonder about, like, how successful these kind of legacy integrators or aerospace companies are going to be in the future in space. I mean, we see stories about the Airbus potentially like spinning off their space business and others. Clearly, Boeing's having some serious issues here. And then you see the rise of companies like Rocket Lab and this great discussion we have with GOM Space and others. Yeah, there's
mhm.
definitely a kind of feel like there's a changing of the guard.
Yeah, I mean, there is a changing of the guard. I think the market, because it's a newly revisited commercial competitive market now, it moves faster than it traditionally has ever moved. You have a significant number of the baby boomer generation that traditionally stayed at a lot of these companies for decades and decades are retiring, and you have a new workforce that's a little different than that. They
Mm.
like people like to move around more. They like to get different experiences. There's more options. So I think I have an incredible respect for all the legacy defense industrial base. I mean, these companies, what they do and have done for decades and decades is just tremendous, and I love working with them.
Mm.
But yeah, they're challenged, I think, with a lot of this, just the social dynamics, generational change. I think the U.S. is definitely trying to be more and more competitive with STEM education and pumping out more engineers from universities, and they have a lot more choices now across the board. So and I think also I think money's spent differently. We see that government is interested in buying more products than just platforms now. So like, what does that mean? All these things are very custom built, and that's how they operate, and that's how the cultures work. So I'd say it's so exciting to just see the change. But a lot of these companies, I think, and it's easy to say this because they're so large and they have legacy, but I think some of the cultural aspects are going to have to change a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think that's probably a good entree into our discussion with Carsten. He's going to talk a bit about how GomSpace is doing it differently and some of the opportunities they've seen there. So I reckon we should get on with the interview. What do you reckon?
Let's do it.
All right. See you in a minute. All right, welcome back. And today, really pleased to have with us the CEO of GomSpace, Carsten Drachmann. Carsten, great to see you again.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
So, Rob, Carsten, and I go a fair way back.
Mm,
My first sales leadership role was actually working for Carsten back in the days of Data Path, which were some
Mhm.
interesting times. And
Yes.
but Carsten, look, yeah, I'm really excited to have this discussion. Like, been following GomSpace really closely. You guys have really been doing some interesting stuff lately. Really visible in social media now. So, like, tell us a little bit about GomSpace for our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are lots is happening right now. So GOM Space, we're based out of Denmark, founded and started here in Denmark in 2007. So I like to call it one of the oldest companies in new space, which is actually true. Our founders were launching the first this tiny milk carton satellites before NASA and ESA started thinking about using small satellites. So our founders are really pioneers here. So at GomSpace today, we do what's called small satellites, sort of from the shoebox kind of size, 46 if you have big feet, and then up to dishwasher kind of size, just to give an idea. So this is what we do. We very much enabling other companies to launch satellites into space and they add their payload. So Earth observation, a camera, signal intelligence, whatever you want to do. But we are very much enabling our customers to go into space. Long heritage, we also are selling. One thing is selling the satellites. We also sell all the bits and pieces inside the satellite. So product sales.
Hmm.
Why? No company investor in the right mind would start that from the beginning, but we actually have it because when our founder started, there was no market, couldn't buy anything anyway. You had to develop everything. So they've developed everything that you need inside a satellite, and that's one of our strengths as well. We have end-to-end, pretty much in-house, all you need for a satellite. The latest that we'll maybe talk about later is we have an IKEA kit. You can we'll send it to you with assembly instructions. You go off yourself. We don't need to build it if you can do it yourself.
Hopefully,
That's
the
a
instructions are a little bit easier than IKEA, though.
Yep. We'll make sure there are no screws missing because typically they're right. Yeah. But
So,
anyway, I
Carsten,
should say, yeah,
yeah,
sorry, we're listed on Nasdaq in Stockholm. Have been for the last 8 years or so. So we're publicly listed, which means there's a lot of information about us out there.
that's awesome. So, Carsten, when Rob and I were talking about a guest that we wanted to have on, and we've had some really fascinating discussions with CEOs and senior execs of a number of space startups. And one of the things I was really keen to bring you on to talk about is particularly your history as a leader of businesses. You've kind of created a bit of a niche for yourself, or a sort of become known as a turnaround guy. Tell us a little bit about that and what draws you to that sort of challenge.
Yeah, what draws anybody to that kind of challenge is a good
Yeah.
question. I think the first time was so I'm not going to mention names here or companies, but the first time was I didn't know that it was a turnaround situation. I thought it was a growth situation. I relocated with my wife, and let's say a couple of weeks in, I realized we couldn't make payroll, and called the owners and say, "But I thought you said you have enough cash." Oh yeah, maybe we don't. So I sort of was in the middle of it, and I had to make a decision at the time. We had relocated, my wife and I, to another country, another city, and thought we can live here for some years. So we had to make a decision saying either we go home and say thank you very much, a nice try, but not for me, or we say okay, let's give it a shot and then go all in. And we decided to stay, and it's been it's a great experience, great journey I had at the time, which developed some of the basic skills about how do you do turnarounds, what it's really about. And there are many different ways, right? There's a positive turnaround. How do you take a good company to be better? In my case, usually it's a company that's suffering a bit, and how do you make it perform? So
So, would you
drawn,
say?
yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say. Do you have like an approach to? I mean, where do you even start with something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Where do you start? Well, two
Yeah.
things. First of all, understand the financials and understand the cash is usually where I start. The other
Hmm.
thing, my punchline, it's all about people. It's all about people in the end, because if you go in a companies I go into have existed for many, many years, you usually find out, is it a lack of technology? Nah, no, not really. It's a lack of competence. Nah, not really. They're everybody there. And slowly you find out it's really about people. It's about how you work together. And then it's a lot about clarity and communication. So what are we trying to achieve together? If it's not clear, you can have as many, super experts you like. They're probably not going to work in the same direction. You're going to be in trouble. So clarity and communication is there, and then the last bit that's what that is customers. So you need to be customer focused, which is can often be an issue. But I think in my first case, it wasn't so much a customer focus. It was simply a lack of clarity of where are we. No idea
Yeah.
where we are in our cash. We don't know actually what we're doing. There's no clarity on where we're heading. And then sometimes you need to do some tough decisions on cutting back on staff and people, but it's usually not where I start. I start from understanding what is the cash situation and why are people not working together.
So, um, it's interesting you talk about culture because like every discussion we've had with execs through these interviews has come back to building culture and
Yeah.
leadership and being like absolutely critical to the success of a company. And Rob and I are completely bought into that. So, sort of thinking about that, like when you come into this sort of situation, like who are the most important people for you as you're kind of, all right, you've got to really quickly, like you've got to manage the financial side, but you've also got to like quickly earn trust with the
Yeah.
team, because it's a tenuous time for them as well, and people have
Hmm.
families and and they rely on the income and whatnot. So like who are the most like important roles that you're working with when you first come into this, and those key relationships?
Um, First of all, when I go into this, I go in with the assumption everybody's fine. Everybody knows what they need to do. They have the knowledge and skills. The issue has been not setting those skills free and enabling people to be successful. That's the starting point. So typically it will be a leadership team, there's usually a leadership group when you come in. So you sit down and you get to know those people quickly. Um, and then you start talking and listening, trying to understand what's on their mind. And you will very often find out there's a lot of things that they never said in the past because it wasn't considered, okay to say it, or people didn't want to point out the flaws. So basically, going in very quickly and opening up the floor for, hey, let's talk. What do you want to do? Do you want to sit here and just watch the whole ship sink, or are we going to try and figure out where to go? Do you want to be on the journey or not on the journey? So it's going to be quite direct and confrontational in the beginning.
Mm.
My experience, 9 out of 10 people, they jump right on it because they all want to be successful. Many of them have been part of the companies I've turned around, have been there for a long time, and they're actually sad about that it's not really succeeding. So it's quite quickly I build a trust with the leaders around me that has been appointed.
Mm.
Sometimes you need to make some changes. That's fine. It's okay. But if you can get them on board first, then the rest of the organization, there's a high chance that they will follow. Number one. Number two is sneaky answer is everybody, because you have to listen to everybody. You have to
Yeah.
understand, what's going on in the organization. So it's not just about isolating yourself in a room with initial leaders, if you can call them that. But I go out and talk to people. Tell me what's going on. What do you see? What's on your mind? And then based on that, try to create a plan.
Yeah, we interviewed an individual, Kevin Steen, not too long ago, and he's had a lot of roles as a CEO, and he talked a lot about it. Was our conversation ended up being a lot like leadership, kind of like what we're talking about now with you, and
Yeah, yeah.
there was a lot of similarities. I think one of the things that he called out was that your leadership's not really about serving yourself or the company per se, but it's actually serving the people that work for you.
Hmm.
And you just said, making sure people are in the roles that they should be in, and then are they actually able to fulfill the roles
Yeah,
that they're in. So yeah, we've heard that a lot, and I think Tony and I agree that's such a key part of everything. It's not just the financials or having the best business plan and all those kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it really is making sure people can fulfill the roles that they're in.
yeah,
Now
yes.
you've been there for, is it since 2023 with GOM Space,
Yeah, a bit about
roughly?
2.5 years, a bit more than that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say, what are some of the structural changes you had to make in terms of less the people, but more about the strategy?
Mm,
I think I
mm.
was doing a little research, and I found some specific call outs around a bit of a pivot more towards commercial. And I
Yes.
think given the current small sat market trends, if you could talk to a little bit about how you thought through that and kind of what the strategy looks like today, I'd be pretty interested to
Yeah,
hear.
absolutely. So it is, like you say, very much focused on customers and market. When you work with relatively heavy engineering organizations, often you see, if you run very classic, you have some operation here, you have some engineering here, you have some sales over here, and then somebody's trying to be a product manager in between, and usually leaving quickly because nobody's listening to them. then we really changed it into, okay, let's try and understand our business. And it became clear quite quickly. We had two very distinct businesses that were not run as distinct businesses. We have the inside of the satellite, the products, as we talked about. That's super transactional. It's already developed. Customer see, customer like, as I call it. They order, supply chain, production, deliver, and collect cash. No engineers involved. We have an engineering organization that's sort of developing and maintaining that. It's a very distinct business model, very transactional. Usually a pipeline is about 3 months out because your delivery is less than a quarter. So every time you get an order, it's out of the door. The other side are these much larger contracts, which can be with agencies, with commercial customers, with governments. That's quite different because it's a 1, 2, 3, even longer year contract. Often as it is, but we're going to talk about a change also, but often with heavy engineering because the customers are pioneering something. That's a very, very different thing. It's about risk management, it's about project management, it's a lot of other things. So very quickly, you simply went in and say, okay, we have to divide this and we have to make it market focused. And these units have to be separated because one of the things I was faced with is what I used to, what I say to people typically, I'm very good at prioritizing, but I simply refuse. Because if my day is a constant battle of prioritizing, trying to figure out what the hell do we do next, we have already failed. So therefore, we make some pre-priorities and say, you work for products and you work for programs, as we call it, and that's what you do. And sometimes in the past, typically see this, okay, but we need to get this product out, yes, but this project is also important, and it's the same people doing it, so it doesn't work. So we made some very distinct setups that helped. And then we had North America, which was basically a no-brainer that it's the biggest market in the world for small sets, and we had a very, very small market share. So this was more, I didn't need to have a solid strategy. I have a fairly, as you know, Tony worked in the US also, I have a fairly good idea of what we need to do. So, hey, let's just get some people on the ground. I'm sure they're going to generate business, and they do. But it's really understanding the business models, yeah.
So it's a great segue. I'm glad you mentioned the North American business, and it's a good segue. I mean, one of the things we as I've spoken with colleagues working in European businesses over the last sort of 12 months or so, like the market for space and defense is changing a lot, and the opportunities for, particularly, I think, for European companies are really changing. How do you see GOM Space as a Danish Swedish company, European company? Do you see advantages or disadvantages as far as your sort of posture looking at the global market and the opportunity in the US and elsewhere?
Well, a couple of things, and maybe winding back, while we say we are a Danish company, and we are founded here, but there's one very distinct thing that I've been a lot in the media in Denmark also, where I'm basically telling the government that I think they're really slow and they're completely underinvested in space. Denmark is one of the few countries in the world that has not bought any space technology. Maybe some grants and funding, whatever. But what that has created is at GOM Space, we are really good at export, which means we never sold a single thing in our own country. Whereas many of our competitors, especially around Europe, Germany, France, Italy, they are feeding off the government because there's so much money being put in, right? European Space Agency is all about year returns. So whatever money is going in here, it's coming back to the industry. So when Denmark put in $100, we get $100 back. And then they put in 3 billion in France, so they get 3 billion back to the space industry. So many of our competitors, not all, but many of them are basically only alive and existing because of a very heavy local focus on, well, we give you money so you can do something for us. That's leading me into why can we compete in the U.S. market? The U.S. market is just another market, if you like, that has some distinct characteristics that you need to understand. I understand some of it. I'm not an expert, and then we've hired some good people that knows how to work with the IDIQs and frame contracts and all those kind of things. Understand where the budgets are coming, the GovWin, the good old GovWin, where do you find out where the money is going, all of that. So of course we can follow that, and there's no reason why we can't sell in there. Maybe we don't want to hold a direct government contract, but we don't have to, because I think the US system is allows for this competition, where Europe is much less competitive. It's much more focused into individual countries, which makes it hard. Whereas I think the US is great because it's actually very open to innovation and other companies outside of US as well. As long as we have a prime in between, we are fine.
Do you think is that changing at all, Carson, with all the bigger, GDP percentage commitments for defense investments, in Europe? Do you think it's changing a little bit or will
It is.
change?
It's for sure it's changing. In Denmark, we've gone up from I think 2% to 4.5% of GDP
Mhm.
for not for space but for defense investment. And this is a little bit the challenge we see a lot in Denmark, but across Europe, the embracing space as part of defense, really seeing it will be an integrated part of the future
Mhm.
defense. To know the war of the future is not fought with the weapons of the past, right? And this is somehow we keep missing that point. Now there's a war in Ukraine. Hopefully it stops very soon. Drones are all of a sudden a big deal. Well, nobody thought about that a couple of years ago, right? So why are we not prepared for that? Could we see drones from space? Yeah, we can probably see them if we put some money into figuring it out. But nobody has been interested so far, so then we are behind already. So I think it's changing in Europe. Another playing field that I really like is Southeast Asia, Africa, but in particular Southeast Asia, because whereas in the US and Europe there are a lot of players in the space industry, but in Southeast Asia, they don't have this domestic space industry. And they don't have that ecosystem, it's a completely open playing field for us. And we have this huge advantage. We actually know how to export and sell outside, whereas many of our competitors from some other larger European countries, they don't really know how to do it. So we have a huge advantage out there. And I also think there's no reason why we couldn't get a decent piece of the pie in the US.
And you did win a contract, right? And I saw a news article around this. I think it was
Yeah.
with the Indonesian Ministry around surveillance for maritime. What is that a good example? Like, dig it a little bit into what you guys are doing there, and
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Let me just, because we're listed, let me just make it very clear. It is not closed yet, but it is
okay,
definitely very public and out there, and we're still working on it. So to
yeah,
be careful what I say. I will tell you if I can't answer your question. No, so this is a really great example of solution selling versus technology selling. Whereas often in Europe, we meet maybe startups or a lot of commercial customers that have all kind of requirements. We want to discuss every single detail of the satellite. Okay, fine. And this is where engineers are getting into fights, and you don't like your customers anymore and all this kind of thing. When we come out, especially this is about governments, they don't necessarily have the skills to buy. And honestly, in Indonesia, they couldn't care less. All they wanted to figure out is how do we stop the illegal fishing? That was a
hmm
requirement. And
hmm
what difference does it make? What size the satellite is, power, all kind of. That's our job. We'll figure that out. How do we get the data down and get out? They have a very nice sort of monitoring center with a lot of screens, and they can see all kind of stuff. They just needed a data stream with more information. So that's a cart. So tell me what you need, and we'll take care of the rest. And we'll see more of that. And actually, it's much more efficient. It's much faster, and it's much cheaper that way, as opposed to in Europe where things are really slow because people are very worried about are we making the right decision or maybe not, or then there's a political play of the geo return, who gets what. In Denmark, there's been some scandals. Oh, some politician made a decision or minister about buying something, and then maybe it's the wrong thing, and then it's a big scandal. They say, come on, guys, this is not how we win. If you're afraid, it doesn't work. You have to be a little bit more bold. And that's where we see, I
yeah.
think, in Asia in particular, that there's much more courage to move on.
So that's super interesting. Just quickly going back to the US. So I mean, you've recently made some important hires to develop the US business, and we're obviously at an interesting time from an American policy perspective about
Mhm.
preference for made in America and whatnot. At least they talk about that, but whether that's actually happening in reality is another thing. But
Yeah.
what does it take for a company like GOM Space, who is competing with some pretty big names in the
Mm.
small sat
Yeah.
space? Like what are some of the advantages that you guys bring?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I think the agility of a small and medium-sized company is simply bigger. It's faster and it's cheaper. The other thing that we see very much is that when we are in the small satellite segment, there are no big players. okay, there are a few. Terran Orbital has a certain size, but they had almost went belly up, so Lockheed had to go in and take them. So if you look around, there's not a lot of big companies that have these smaller satellites because it's too difficult for them.
Mm.
Airbus, Airbus, they don't have like they buy
No.
them because they don't have to. They only if it has to anything below 100 million euros, they don't know how to do, right? So you might think there's a lot of competitors, but not really when we come to the space of a small set. Of course, there are competitors, but they're not necessarily big. So I think it's a fairly level playing field from that perspective. Then it's about trust and approach. I believe we have developed here at GOM Space really a focus on customer. Customers they like to work with us because we actually listen to them and we're trying to accommodate them. Sometimes maybe too much, but nevertheless they like us. Give you an example. We have won now 2 contracts out in Singapore for microsat, so the slightly bigger versions, right? For sort of 150 kilo-ish rather than the smaller CubeSats. We won ahead of the whole world. Everybody was out there wanting to win that. We've never launched a microsat before.
Mm.
Never launched a microsat
That's
before.
amazing.
We know at least 5 other players who had in space proven we can do it. Why did they pick us? Because they like working with us, because they could see we understand what we're doing, they can trust us, and the whole process leading up to the decision has been very positive for them. So it makes a big difference, and we can replicate that also in the US.
Yeah, it's shocking that helps to actually be people want to work with you.
Focus on your customer, right? You
Uh,
guys know that, yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. It
yeah, yeah,
actually reminds me of years ago when I was working with Hughes, and at that stage they were competing with Viasat for the big
yeah,
NBN program in Australia, and NBN really wanted layer 2. And Viasat and Hughes both had layer 3 products, and Hughes was like, no, you really want layer 3, and
yeah,
Viasat said, well, we'll do layer 2 if that's what you want. Guess who
yeah,
won the guess who
yeah, yeah,
won
yeah,
the
yeah,
project?
exactly,
So
yeah, exactly,
yeah.
yeah. No, but there's an element of that, right? So I think it's very much customer focused. But back to why do we think we can compete in the US? I think first of all, the market keeps growing, right? So so you get a small piece of the pie. That piece will grow bigger every year. Then it's about finding the primes. There's some fairly big contracts and also these contract of reference where we can hook into. It's no difference from what data pass, right? Most of the stuff we sold there, we sold to somebody else who was actually holding the contracts, so it's okay.
Mhm.
And I think with the agility we have, and we are very flexible. If we need to have local production, where we set up local production, it's not a big deal. People often ask me, "Oh, what about the tariffs? You're stating strategy, changing strategies." No, I think people are thinking it. It doesn't matter. I just need to position my brand and start getting some traction. We'll figure out the other parts. It's okay. I understand if you already have a $50 billion business and you're hit by 10%. Okay, that hurts.
Mm.
But in the scale that we're operating, it doesn't really matter.
So, Carson, where do you see the business evolving? You mentioned, and sometimes I think these are the best customers, the ones that are not too technical because they're asking for,
Hmm.
this is my problem, or
Yeah,
maybe some of them have a hypothesis on what the solution might be, but they don't really know the technical background, and sometimes that's actually better, right? And I think
yeah, yeah.
sometimes those lead to businesses that sell the solution, the answer, the insight, or a service of sorts. Do you see Where do you see that potentially playing into your strategy over time, or where do you just see the business evolving?
So I see 3+1 legs that we will be standing on going into the future. So this is a sneak peek into the strategy that I've half started communicating. So first of all, I see our product business, so the core products that will continue to grow because we're selling to competitors, to
Mhm.
universities, to anybody who's launching in space, and now with this IKEA kit. So buy a satellite that's pre-tested. One of the things I think that are going wrong in the industry there is that everybody's trying to invent the satellite bus over and over again. So stop doing
Mm.
that. Focus on the business case and focus on the payload. Just buy it's here. We've done it for 20 years. We know it works. Just buy it. You can put it together yourself and do all kind of cool stuff. That's okay. And paint it red if you want to, but stop inventing over and over again. There's no business case in it. So that's a very specific segment for us. The other segment, let's jump to the solutions that you mentioned. Absolutely, is more end-to-end solutions focused on what is the problem you're trying to solve, or what is the need you have. And it's not right now. We very much see the world as sort of Earth observation or signal intelligence or SAR. People have these niches. Often the solutions are a combination of the above, which means it becomes a solution. So it's not never one necessarily one player sitting on all. Planet has a certain business case, Spire has a certain business case, but in the end, it's a combination of everything. So therefore, the solution space is there. Yes, we see governments buying more. I see moving from an as a service to asset ownership, especially in government. Go 2-3 years back, everybody was thinking, oh, the telco world with as a service, the satellite world is going to be the same. That's the best thing we know. Everything is as a service. Thanks to Trump and a few wars here and there, absolutely not. Who will trust? And I say that, and people say, don't say that, I can't say it anyway. Who will trust Elon Musk? Who trusts Elon Musk to actually keep that damn network alive? He was just in a White House fooling around. Do you really know what he's going to do? No, you don't. And he has absolute power. It's not going to work. And nations around the world, they understand it. The same comes with even with imaging and Earth observation, also signal intelligence. When the shit hits the fan and you're in a crisis, if you have as a service, do you know that you get the priority you need? What about if your neighbor country has also has a crisis, maybe a crisis with you? So where the satellite going to look? You don't know that, you can't control it. So I see that very much. There is a trend towards asset ownership, which is our sweet spot, obviously. And then we have a middle path. I call it platforms, where we look much more at capacity, standardizing platforms that we can deliver in high volumes. And I see that coming also in more and more constellations. Not necessarily, a SATCOM is usually requires a bit more, but there will also be other types of signal intelligence where you see high volume of satellites or forest fires, observing environmental disasters. You see that coming, and I'm going back to there. Stop inventing the satellite bus over and over again. It is not necessary. So there's also a sweet spot for us, sort of in between the solutions where we put everything together. Here, buy a battery pack and a power supply, and here's a plastic bag with a key kit, do it yourself. Or the in between, where we have a very stable supply chain, can do high volume production at high quality, to take that risk away from the customer and usually high speed. So these are the sort of the three legs. There's a fourth leg, which is all the money that's flowing through Europe right now. EU money. Germany just announcing a couple of weeks ago 35 billion euros to space alone. And I spoke with many of the players in the German industry last week in Bremen, and everybody knows they can't deliver that much. The German space industry cannot deliver 35 billion worth of space assets in the next 5 years. They cannot, which means it's gonna ripple out into other countries. That's us. So then we are playing a little bit differently. So we're playing to understand where the budget's coming from. It's a bit more political play, because you need to know who's allocating the budget, who's deciding what to buy, how is it flowing. So it's a little bit of a different play. So we're playing that game as well. So that was 3 + 1. Did I answer a question? I forgot the question.
That was really good. No,
it was really interesting.
No, I was just thinking about everything you said, because one of the things that Tony and I like to talk about, on this show is part of it's educational, part of it is like helping people that are kind of new to the industry better understand some of the fundamentals. But the most, I think, interesting part for me is where we are in this kind of revisited industry of space, is how things are changing, and how kind of more of a commercial influx is going to lead to more and more, I think, new business models. And then you have, I think you were talking about, I think Starlink, SpaceX, Elon. I think the industry will eventually get to a point where there's consumer protection based on that natural free market competition that will just continue to mature over the years, right? We have New Glenn now, which had a very successful landing, and so I think Tony and I were talking about how exciting that is, because it's a great engineering feat, but it's also because now we're going to have more competition, which means more companies such as yourselves that are really innovating at the edge of the customer are going to come up with very new ways of selling services and adding value, and it's going to be great for investment and jobs and everything else. So I think that part of it is super interesting, and I think what you were laying out is not necessarily what you can just kind of read online, but being on the front line and leading this company, which clearly you're making some huge inroads in. You're seeing it firsthand on how, where the opportunities are, which I think is very, very cool. And I can't wait to see how things progress.
Yeah, me too. Well, I hope that's the plan.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're impressive. So I have no doubt that under your leadership, you have a lot of great opportunity to grow and be successful, Karsten. So
I hope so.
I mean, just to tie a bow around that, I mean, what does the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years look like for
Mm.
GOM Space? Do you reckon, Carsten?
Yeah, well, usually I answer that question. I get it often, and then I have to modify it a bit because we are listed, so I can't share more than what I already shared. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
having said that, when I started 2.5 years ago, bankruptcy was an option. It
Mm,
was not necessarily a failure. Absolute success was being alive today. So we are alive today. So we have absolute success. 10% year-on-year growth over the next 3 years, absolute failure. Absolute failure. Being alive
mm,
is an even bigger failure, but significant growth is
mm,
success. So I think that answers your question. We are now changing from, yeah, we could go bankrupt. A very tight management of cash, really not looking so much as, oh, we have to have great innovation or large development projects. Or look what's over here. No, we just manage it back to when we can handle our cash. We get a motivation back from the employees, which we have a big time. We get the investor trust back. I get the board trust back because there was no trust with the board, as you can imagine. I don't know if you saw that, but 2022 was an absolute disaster. Investors didn't trust us anymore. To rebuilding that trust, that after 2.5 years, our share prices and market cap has gone up 10 times. It was even up 15 times a few months ago, where there was a huge hype in defense shares. So now we have a platform where we have shown that we can execute and deliver positive results. We have our cash flow under control. We have cash flow fee positive, which was a target in itself. We definitely were not when I started. And we have money in the bank. We have a good investor that has invested even more money. So we have money in the bank. Our balance sheet is good with an equity ratio. We have access to more capital. We have all the ingredients that are needed to create that growth. And then the last and most important thing, there's a market that's growing. You need to find your footing into that market. How do you capture? And obviously we have I described the 3+1 approach that we have right now. So money is flowing, no doubt. We need to capture it. One of the things, though, that I'm pitching in Europe, I've been speaking in Brussels a couple of times on resilience from space in Europe. In Europe, we really need to move away from grants and funds and all these kind of things into give me a damn commercial contract.
mm,
I don't want your money for innovating and setting up another test satellite. Give me a contract for the next 5 years and I'll give you what you need. And then I'll get, if I need money, I'll get the money because it's not a problem. There's plenty of money out there. And if you have a 5-year government contract, people are going to stand in line trying to want to invest on. So this is a bit part of the discussion. We're trying to change the narrative and say no more grants. Just start buying commercial contracts from governments, and that
mm.
will also boost us. So that some of the answers as well. What's in the next 3 years? Definitely growth.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Carsten, I mean, it's a credit to you and the team, what you've been able to achieve in a really short time. So super exciting, exciting time to be a member of the GOM Space team, I think.
But it is, and it is team, right? As I was saying, we
Yeah.
are starting from the people, and it's about figuring out how we want to do together. Then you can do a lot.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, we usually like to sort of end the episode just with a
We're
bit of
already
a
at the end. Come on, we just
fun,
started. 35 minutes in.
with a bit of a
we
fun
can keep going.
question. We can keep going. With a bit of a fun question, I guess. One of the things that I think makes the space industry really unique and what I've really enjoyed about my time in space is the fact that it's truly a global business.
Yeah.
It's still quite small, but compared to some others, but takes you to amazing places. So it's kind of a two-part question. So what's your favorite place that your career in space has taken you? If you could have your 20s again, where would you have lived?
That is a good question. Now I have been privileged. I have lived in many places already, and my wife is Canadian, as you know well, Tony. So going back, why don't I start by listing? I've actually lived in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. It's fantastic. I've lived in Singapore. I lived many years in Sweden. Lived in London. partly lived in Vancouver, where my wife is from. So I've already seen a lot. So maybe I answer from my wife's perspective. If we could have an apartment in Paris, one in London, maybe travel to Rome occasionally, and then Hawaii is great. So you know what? I don't. We like Denmark. We're probably gonna stay here.
Yeah.
Um, I have no regrets on any of it, but I like to keep traveling and seeing new places. Australia, for once, I've been a couple of times, Tony, but I'm looking forward to
Well, you
being
got to
down
get
there.
down
And,
there. We got a
yeah,
great
absolutely, I
spot.
will.
Yeah.
It's a great spot.
I
No, I
didn't.
love all kinds of places, and it's also, we started a bit, maybe tied it into culture. I have lived in many cultures. I've managed and led many cultures over the years. And in the end, I realized it boils down to one single thing. It's all about people, right? And
Yeah.
and maybe we have a little bit of a different upbringing and a different cultural background, but it's all about people, and that's where I start from. And then you have to find a common language between a lot of nationalities.
Yep. Oh, we
Yep, we,
we
we lost
just
uh, we
lost
lost
Rob.
Rob.
Oh,
He's
he's
back.
back.
Yeah,
You good, Rob? All right.
yeah.
No, something
I,
happened there. I didn't know you'd lived in Rio.
I
Though.
did many years
Yeah.
ago. I lived in
Yeah.
Rio de
Right.
Janeiro. Fantastic time. Right, it's called Apuador, right between Ipanema and Copacabana. So yep. And
Very good.
if
Rob, are you
you want
back
to
with
know
us?
if the girl from Ipanema exists, I can confirm she does. And she is beautiful. She's not wearing a lot of clothes. So yes,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
That's awesome. Rob, are you back? No, having some
not there.
technical difficulties.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll offer. I've been thinking about this. This question of like if I could have my time again, where I would live in my 20s. And we had a family trip to New York a couple of years ago, and
Oh yeah,
we walked down to Brooklyn. And as I was
yeah,
walking around Brooklyn, I was like, man, wish I'd found this place in my
yeah.
20s. And I think the other place, and I would never get my wife would never move there, but there's something about London that is really special.
Oh yeah,
I love being in London, and I get to spend some time with you there. Obviously,
yeah, yeah.
Carsten, it's a cool city.
It is a fantastic city. I think if you ask me of the places I have lived, where would I go back? London, absolutely.
Yeah,
There is, it's you turn a new corner and there's something else happening there. There's always something going on in London.
yeah.
It's fantastic.
What about you, Rob?
Um, so I think recently, a couple of years ago, I went to Tokyo, and that was just
Oh, Tokyo is amazing.
Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean,
yeah,
I had wanted to go there most of my life, um, and it exceeded all expectations. I think that the people and the food and that city is just crazy cool.
yeah,
Hopping on the subway and just being able to go everywhere, and everything is just so different. I loved it, and it's so clean, and people are really nice, and they
Yeah,
respect. It really, you could tell they respect one another, and they respect the elderly, and they take care of each other. I thought that was an unbelievable place. If I were to do it again in my 20s, though, I mean, I had a great 20s. I lived in San Francisco and loved every
yeah,
minute, yeah, literally every minute of it. But if I were to do it again, I would probably, just like you, Carson, I'd probably consider Paris. I love Paris. I'd
yeah,
love to learn a new language, which I never really did.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
that city is incredible, though. Love it. Yeah.
absolutely. We go back every year. We meet also Tony. Well, you
yeah,
weren't there last time, but yeah, for
no,
the Paris satellite show, there is great. So
yeah.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, look, Carsten, thanks again for joining us. From my personal perspective, it was really a delight for you to join. Like, you've been a great friend and mentor to me over the years. So it was good
been an absolute
for
pleasure, Tony. Yeah.
some of our listeners to hear a little bit more about you and the success of GOM Space. So if people want to learn a little bit more about you and GOM Space, where can they find you?
You go into gomspace.com. Then you'll find our website, and then you can Google my name, Carsten Drachmann. You'll find a lot of we have quarterly presentations. There's a lot of podcasts and other things. So if you want to learn more there, and then we're listed on Nasdaq in Stockholm. GOMX is our little ticker, so go look us up there.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I'll make sure we add those to the show notes anyway. So with that, thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure that you leave a rating and write a review. And other than that, thanks for joining us, Carsten, and happy
Thank
Thanksgiving,
you.
Rob.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Great to meet you,
that was
Carsten.
good.
Thank you.
Good on you.
Likewise. Okay. Bye bye.